Welcome to the Brand Wise podcast, where we talk about the big branding moves that business owners are making and the why behind it. I'm your host, Jess Freeman, here to help you be wise and be bold. Today, I am chatting with Jenna Shriver, and she builds successful brands through education, strategy, and brand photography. And I love Jenna's story. I think it's a really good example. Another reminder of rebranding has all kinds of timelines. It is not always a 6-week transformation. Sometimes it takes a few years. And I also really love her advice at the end, and I don't want to spoil it, so just make sure you stay tuned for the whole episode. But without further ado, here is my conversation with Jenna. Welcome to the show, Jenna. Thank you so much for being here. To get us started, what is your brand all about?
Well, my brand is about helping other brands actually through brand strategy and brand photography.
I love that. We need a lot of brand strategy. I'm all about it, of course. So, of course, we're here to talk about your rebrand. Take us back to the old brand. What did it used to be? What made you decide, like, now is the time I need to rebrand and shift things around?
Sure. I feel like my story is probably a lot messier than most people's, but I'm excited to tell it. The first 10 years of my career, I was a wedding and family photographer. And so I discovered that I needed to rebrand visually whenever I shifted and began to serve businesses through brand photography. And I started to let go of the weddings and the family photography. So visually, my brand was still the same for about 2 years once I made that shift in my service changes. And I just felt it. Like I knew that it wasn't visually, it wasn't in alignment. It wasn't speaking to my ideal client anymore. And so it was about a 2-year journey from realizing that to then actually launching the visual rebrand.
So I want to point out 2 things and talk about that. One, you actually shifted your services and your offers before the visual change, which is totally fine. Like no one says you have to do all of it at once. And 2, you said it took a few years, which people who know me closely, I'm a very quick action taker. And so the thought of it taking a few years, I'm like, oh, like that would drive me nuts.
And it drove me nuts too.
So let's first talk about you shifted the offers first. And were you, when you made that shift, were you like, oh, I'm good with the brand? Or you're like, I just don't have like the time or capacity to do the visuals right now?
It's kind of a twofold answer. So this happened about 9 years ago. So keep in mind that was really before in the creative and entrepreneurial space, there was a lot of talk about branding to begin with. And so I feel like I felt like I was pioneering this area that I didn't have a lot of people or businesses speaking into me to give me guidance on what to do. So I was like discovering things for myself that I had no leadership in. So that's one side of the coin. But then the other part was that for me, I was really discovering like, who do I feel like I'm called to serve? And so that's why the shift happened with my services first before the visual part of my rebrand.
Was it hard? Like I know some photographers that have shifted, not into brands, but like maybe they stopped doing weddings or, like whatever it is. Was it hard for you to make that shift, or was it an enjoyable, like, I'm very happy, like I'm fine leaving this behind and shifting to something new?
The shift of who I was serving in the service, that was difficult because I had built my business over 10 years pretty much around weddings. And so as any photographer or service-based business would know, like your bigger rocks that you depend on financially, to let that go was really scary. But at the same time, I just knew in of myself, like it was time and I had to. And so even though it was hard, once I made that change, probably a year in, I felt such peace and I knew like this isn't supposed to be for me any longer.
Yeah, yeah, that
Mhm.
makes sense. And I always try to remind myself of that kind of, I don't know if it's a specific quote or just a line of thinking about how like every yes you have, you're saying no to something else.
Yeah.
Thinking about like, what do I really enjoy? What am I a master at? And I think that's something we could all kind of lean into, is like really thinking about, what does my brand need to stand for and like
Yes.
really focus on.
Yeah.
Now you said the visuals were not kind of matching up with where you were at with the
Right.
change.
Right.
Can you talk us through, because like I kind of know what that means as a designer.
Sure.
But for people, I know there are people who like, I don't like, what does that even mean? So like, what did that feel like? What did that like literally look like? Like, was it just colors? Was it fonts? Like, what were you feeling mismatched about?
Yeah, all of the above because my brand spoke to brides and grooms, like,
Mm-hmm.
it's very wedding, pretty, those types of things. And I just knew that my brand needed to make a visual shift to speak something more modern and more um, appealing to other creative service-based business owners
Mm-hmm.
and be more neutral. I think that was the
Mm-hmm.
one of the big things. And yet still be me, right? Because
Yeah.
whenever we are a personal brand, like it still has to have an element of reflecting who you are
Yeah.
while also attracting your ideal clients.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Were you, I know a lot of wedding photographers, not all, but a lot have that kind of like whimsy, like classical, lots of like large script fonts, and there's like lots of white and bright. And was that kind of where your brand was beforehand? Like, were you one of those wedding photographers, or what was your brand?
In that direction, yes.
Yeah.
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 Mhm.
So that, yeah, it doesn't really fall in line with the family, or not family, the brand
Yeah.
vibe necessarily.
Yeah, it was a little too feminine,
Mhm.
and I needed to move where it was still feminine, but it was more professional.
Yes, yeah.
Mhm.
And I mean, this could be a whole other podcast, but I as a designer have to remind clients, like, you can be feminine without
Yep.
pink, without large script fonts, without
Mhm.
like, I mean, not that those things are like bad to have, obviously, but I know I have clients who are like, I want to be feminine, but like I hate pink.
Right.
And so it's, you don't have to lean into that. Like, there are other
Right.
ways to do it. So
Mhm.
what was the hardest part of the rebranding process? Because it took a few years. Like, so I
Right.
imagine it wasn't all just rainbows and butterflies.
No, and I'm a pretty quick action taker as well. So for me, the fact that it wasn't quick was the challenging part, but I felt that it was very intentional.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I didn't have anybody leading and guiding me and saying this is step 1, this is step 2, this is step 3 in the rebranding or branding process for the first time because again, this was like 9, 10 years ago. And
Mm-hmm.
so for me, I felt like I was guided through like an intentional process of discovering who I was called to serve and then what was this new mission and vision that I now have because of these new people that I'm serving with the same gift, right? I'm still doing
Mm-hmm.
photography, but it's a whole different group of people. They have different needs, they have different goals, all of the things. So
Mm-hmm.
I felt like it took time because I had to lay those foundations first and have that clear before I was going to move into the visual rebrand process. Again, I was not self-aware at the time to know that that should be step 1, 2, and 3, but I felt like I was intentionally guided in that direction.
Let's talk about, how has the rebrand impacted your business since it's launched?
That was the part that really shocked me. Like, as soon as I launched the visual rebrand piece, I had already obviously been doing the new services, serving the new people, talking about it, showing my work. But as soon as I relaunched or launched for the first time my rebrand, my the response I got was just phenomenal. Like, it blew me away. I did not expect to get that many inquiries, get that many bookings. Like, 2022 was so packed for me business wise. And I think it also, I was lucky, it coincided with a lot of people starting new businesses or launching new services. And so they had a need for my services at that point in time. But it just took off in a way that I did not expect. And so I'm a huge champion for people to get all those things in alignment, brand strategy wise, and then your visuals so that you can experience similar results.
It's always fun to see like what change, like how it impacts the business. And
Hmm.
I've obviously it's more fun when there's like a huge response to it, but it's also very affirming, like as a
Yeah.
business owner to see that and be like, okay, so like I am taking the right step.
Right. And I also feel to share because some people listening may hear that side of my story and feel discouraged if they're not
Mm,
experiencing that. And so I don't want you to feel discouraged because I'm also part of a different business that we rebranded. We did not experience those immediate, like the immediate gratification piece. We're still building and we're building
mm,
slow, but we know that everything is in alignment. So we're not questioning that we're not doing something right or that the visuals aren't right. Like, we're just staying the course.
yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
Did you I'm curious if you've had any like trickle like in of still having wedding inquiries, or was it like a because I know sometimes people are like, oh, like but maybe she still does it. Or do you feel like the messaging and the launch was super clear and it just like cut those off?
I think for the most part that they did. Any inquiries that I got over the next couple of years were probably just the result of I still had all my blog posts up
Mm,
from old years and people found them through that. But I believe most of the legitimate inquiries that I got, people said, "Oh, I see you don't do this anymore, but we're having trouble finding a wedding photographer. Would you consider it?" Like, it was those type of
yeah.
inquiries, or they were just flat out like kind of random inquiries that you can tell they didn't even look at your website type of a
Uh-huh.
thing.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, because I know that sometimes when people rebrand, they are afraid of, like, confusing their audience
Yep.
when it's such a shift in, like, completely different offers. I mean,
Yeah.
it's still photography, so it's not a it's not like you switch to interior design, but
Right.
I know people are afraid of confusing their audience,
Hmm.
and that impacting, like, the results, or, like, is it gonna slow things down? Do you feel like there was any confusion at the beginning, or was everyone just like, "This is awesome, like, go Jenna, can't wait to hire you?"
No, I think probably what helped me in that area was shifting my services first for a long
Mm,
period of time. I think
mm.
that definitely helped.
Yeah, and did
Mhm.
you we're now getting back into the rebrand process, but did you do, like, a hard launch, or was it like, "Oh, I'm adding in brand photography into my services and slowly kind of hiding the wedding photography?" Like,
Yeah, I think what happened naturally is because I shifted my services over the course of like a year to 2 years, that's what naturally happened.
yeah.
And I stopped marketing weddings and family photography the moment that I made the decision that I was shifting into the brand photography realm. So it took me a while to build up my portfolio for brand photography to start marketing that. So that's, I think, a huge reason why it did take me about 2 years to really launch this new brand because I needed a solid portfolio to be able to do for my website and marketing and all of that.
Did you do any, like, free photo shoots or, like, discounts, or were you like, "I'm just like, you gotta pay." Like, I know because obviously you're still a photographer, you know what you're doing,
Yeah.
but I know sometimes when people are shifting, they're like, but how do I show people I can do this?"
I absolutely did offer some discounted sessions, yes,
Yeah,
up
yeah.
front to friends of mine, that were my ideal clients in order to build my portfolio. I don't remember because this has been a little while ago.
Yeah.
I don't remember doing free sessions because at that point in time, I'm like, I'm a really good
Yeah.
photographer. I
Yeah.
deserve to be paid. But I did do a few trades. So I
Nice.
traded services with like my business coach. I traded services with a really dear friend who did some styling for me. So I think be open to the idea of trading services and or
Mhm.
discounted sessions in order to build your portfolio. But if you're already a very talented photographer, don't feel like you have to give free sessions unless it's like something that you can't do without.
Right. Yeah. How do you feel like the rebrand has impacted you personally, like as
Mm.
the business owner?
Yeah, this is an awesome question. And looking back, I feel like it really did help me step into a new level of confidence in myself and who I'm speaking to, who I'm serving, and the talents that I have to bring to the table.
I feel like that is the number one thing people keep saying is
Yeah.
confidence.
Hmm.
Confidence. Do you feel like it even helps you be more visible and like you're like, this is, I know that I'm good at this and I'm marketing myself and like you can fully step into that because you now have that confidence piece?
100%. Hmm.
It's almost like, I mean, not that business is going to always be easy, but it's almost like that piece of it, it just gets easier when you're like, oh, I am like fully in alignment with
Yes.
my offers and my brand now.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. I feel like it makes marketing what you do so much easier. Like the actual practical steps of marketing can still be challenging sometimes, but it's the mindset side. I think that's what it really helps with that for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
And it's nice to see that it's paid off because it was such a long process.
Yeah.
As we were saying before we started recording, like there's a lot of people who are like, ooh, I'm going to rebrand and kind of shift things. That's going to take 6 weeks
Hmm.
and boom, I'm done.
Hmm.
And it is not always the case.
Yeah. I think that really being confident in whatever your timeline is, it has to do
Hmm.
with what are you rebranding? Like, are
Hmm.
you just rebranding your visuals? And if that's the case, if everything else about your unseen, your foundational components of your brand are all the same, then yeah, you can probably do it a lot quicker. But for me, I was like, essentially, it's like tearing down a building all the way down, destroying even the foundation of it and having to rebuild from the foundation back up. And so
Hmm.
that is going to take so much longer than just redecorating a room, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's a lot more work to
Yeah.
do everything and not just slap a new layer of paint on
Yeah.
it, and which is
Hmm.
also fine, but it's
Yes.
just it's totally different scenarios and like
Hmm.
you really have to dig deep and kind of reflect on like what am I exactly rebranding and am I hiring somebody? Am I doing it myself? Is it the
Yes.
offers, the colors? You have to kind of figure out every piece of it. And did
Yeah.
you did you hire people? Was everything DIY? What did that look like?
Yeah, and that is another reason why it took so long is because I did a lot of it myself. The only thing that I outsourced was I bought a website template from
Hmm.
a friend of mine who I was working with a lot. And the reason I did that is because I envisioned this new website, and I'm like, okay, I know what I want it to look like. And she happened to just launch a new website template, looked exactly like it, and I was
And
like,
you're like, thank you.
yes. I'm like, okay, I know I'm going to spend a pretty penny on this, and that's it because it's worth it. It saved
Yeah.
me from having to build it myself from scratch. And
Yeah.
so I customized everything, wrote all the copy, like all the things. So that's another reason it took so long. But I think I had my website done and about ready like 2 months, 2 to 3 months
Nice.
before I actually like marketed my, like released everything.
That makes sense.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's a pretty good
Hmm.
timeline and quite handy that the friend had released that template.
It
You're like,
was so intentional.
I love it. Okay,
Yeah.
so to wrap up, what
Mhm.
advice do you have for anyone that's thinking about rebranding?
I would encourage you with rebranding to make sure that the unseen components of your brand are in alignment, right? So that's who you're serving, how you're serving them. It's your mission, your vision, your core values. Whenever I work with my clients with brand strategy, I find that those three things, the mission, vision, core values, sometimes are lacking. And
Mhm.
they're very clear on who they're serving and how they're serving them, but you really need to be able to communicate to them what's the value that you bring to them, what's the change and the solution that you're bringing to them, and how do you do it? And that's with your core values. It's the culture that you have in your business. And it helps you to be able to align yourself with your ideal clients and for them to know that they're safe with you and for you to know that you're safe with them, because they're by hiring you, if you're clear and communicate your core values, they're saying, yes, I believe in this. And this is the type of person in business that I am, or at least close enough to agree to it.
Yeah.
And the other things too, I think people overlook is getting clear on what your brand structure is. And for me, the way I define the different types of brand structure, like, are you a personal brand? Are you a business brand? Are you a team brand? Because if you're not clear on that, we can get confusing with our language. You can start saying, we are so excited about this whenever people are like, well, it's just you. So you're a personal brand. You need to talk like a personal brand. And that goes, then your brand voice, is what comes out of your brand structure and your mission and vision and core values and all those things. And so I would say get clear and make sure that your foundation is in place. Just like I said, if you're building a building, that's how I love to look at a brand. It's like you want to have a strong foundation to build that building on. And things like your mission, vision, core values, your brand structure, your brand voice, and your brand personality are all part of that foundation.
Yeah. I often have website clients who are like, do you think my copy should say I or we? And I'm like, well, like, how are you presenting your brand?
Yeah.
Like, are you a whole like private practice and you have a team? Are you, is it just you? Like, even, it really depends on you. Like, there's not a definitive like right or wrong answer, because it totally depends on your brand. Like, it's not a website thing. It's a brand voice question.
Yes.
So I'm glad you mentioned that. Well, thank you so much for sharing your rebrand story with us. If
You're
we
welcome.
want to check out your work and all that kind of fun stuff, where can we connect with you online?
Yeah, it's super easy. My website is jennashriver.com. I am on Instagram and Facebook and most of the apps. So just at Jenna Shriver is my brand strategy and brand photography accounts.
Awesome. I will link all that in the show notes so you guys can go connect with Jenna. But thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
If today's branding story inspired you and you're ready to start your own rebrand adventure, head over to justcreatives.com/rebrand to explore how we can work together on your brand. If you enjoyed today's show, be sure to leave a review or share it on Instagram, and tune in next week for another episode.